not the skills that the coachees want, because the skills, if you like, could be read in a book. It's the emotional connection. I sometimes liken coaching to romance. And you know that if you look at how a couple first get together for the first kiss, if the attention is on the kiss, then it's a slapped face. If the attention is on the person, then you build the moment. And one of the questions, and this will tie in later some of the competencies, how do we know the moment to make the kiss? We read it in the book, absolutely. Yeah. How many of you women have experienced, and some guys may have had it too, but generally it goes this way around, a guy who's chatting you up and he has great lines. Say she has nice eyes, that's number 6. Yeah, it happens, doesn't it? But there's nothing there. But if a man or a woman, whichever, spontaneously notices your eyes and how beautiful they are, then it's a different conversation. And same with the kiss, and actually the same with coaching. You know that one of the things we'll be looking at later on is powerful questions. And one of the things that people sometimes do is they want a list of powerful questions. And there's nothing wrong with the list. But if the question is used, the right question at the wrong time is the wrong question. So there's something very important there in what Maria is saying about the human connection. We long for connection. One of the things that I sometimes say is that the human soul longs to be seen and witnessed in the world. It doesn't need fixing and solutions. The trouble is, we already have the solutions in writing. We do. This is what you do, A, B, C. As Peter says, we can give you the information, the intellectual information. How many of you know what to do about exercise and still struggle with exercise? How come? You have the information. Are you guys mad, as my mother would say? How come? Why don't you go to the gym or not smoke or whatever it is that you know? Because we are more than just linguistic beings. But think about even learning a language. The first time you start to learn Spanish, you read Spanish in a book and it all looks fine, and you listen to some tapes and it's okay, isn't it? And then you go to Spain, where you try and speak with Spanish people, and you'll notice something's happening about discomfort. Suddenly, there is it's not just an intellectual piece. You start to feel something in your emotions, or you start to feel something in your body when you start to immerse yourself in that new territory, which we call Spanish. And so we're going to be exploring some of those, but I just want to be clear that when you go through the discomfort, that is the learning, because after that, when you first stumbled over those first few words of Spanish, or you made a fool of yourself in a Spanish conversation or something, at some stage, fluency arrives. And, we have many Dutch people here whose English is fluent enough for us to be having a conversation in English, not in Dutch. And I imagine that some of you may have gone through some discomfort. And sometimes I notice if I go to Holland or Denmark, where people speak excellent English, and I say, do you speak English? Either they'll say, of course, as if there's no possibility that they wouldn't, but sometimes they'll say a little. And then, of course, you find out that a little means better English than many English people can speak. But there is that discomfort that comes. But through the discomfort, when we go through it, comes a certain kind of fluency. Sometimes, like in the case of my dancing, I think it's going to take a few more years yet. But there is something about being willing to immerse ourselves in the journey. And I think one of the things we've seen from some of the conversations you were having with Dan earlier is that some of those obstacles to learning have become visible for you already. Get used to them, because I have some bad news for you. They will be with you for the next 4 months, or the 9 months if you stay for the full program. They will. We will be exposing you in different ways through the learning we do here, through the somatics that Curtis and Nellika do with you, to the stuff that we do in the program guides, the stuff that we do with your program coaches, that expose you to taking a look in areas where you don't take a look. And you will find plenty of opportunities for discomfort. You may even find plenty of opportunities to say, why the hell did I sign up for this crazy program? Because life was so much certain before. It was. I can say that for myself, with Newfield. My life was much more certain before I did Newfield. But the learning it has given me about myself, about life, and the capacity for engagement in life that I now have, that I didn't have before, is much greater. But it sometimes is still uncomfortable. Okay, so I want to explore with you here, Eric, is just a little bit. Let me imagine, as my assessment is, I'm a hard worker. Yeah. So it can generate some desirable outcomes in the sense that I will get things done. Yes. Okay? What I want to explore with you is that what else might it generate? Or what might it close?
What might it close?
Yeah. So if somebody says to me, would you like to come and spend Friday afternoon? We'll go and have a nice long lunch, drink a few beers. What would I say?
No.
No, because I am hardworking.
Yeah.
One of the things that I want you to get is that it's easy to fall into this thing that negative assessments are negative because they generate negative consequences, and
Yeah.
positive assessments are good because they generate desirable outcomes. Actually, we can be as imprisoned. You know, if I believe I'm bright, it might be very hard for me to admit I don't know something,
Mm-hmm.
which closes possibility. So actually, one of the things that I invite you to, weird though it might sound, is that we can become imprisoned by positive assessments as much as by negative assessments.
Thanks.
Thank you. So that is key, because what we're here about is when we live any assessment of ourselves as a property of ourselves, we become just as trapped by it, whether it's a positive or a negative assessment. I'm fit and healthy. Well, that's great. And I go to the gym and, you know, fantastic, fit, strong, everything else. But can I ever just slob on the sofa with a couple of beers and pizza? Oh no, not me. My body's my temple. You know? And people say that. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But when it generates a closedness to possibility, then we get into some difficulty. That follows that a little bit similar, which is that you have the reptile brain, which is, you know, reptiles can only pretty much fight, flee, mate, and eat. That's what they are concerned with. And then you have the mammalian brain, or the limbic brain, which is the brain about connection. It's the part of the brain that allowed us to have emotions. Emotions arose as a biological necessity for us to care for each other. Because if you look at mammals, they're not born ready to face the world. They need to be looked after a little bit. And of course, humans are the strongest example of that. You know, a baby's born after 9 months and you have a baby and you leave it, well, then the baby won't live. So we need to care. And that's what the mammalian brain is about. And now we've developed the neocortex, or the rational brain. And this is the brain that allows us to take action, strategize, create a conference, and everything else. In our paradigm, what we do is to prioritize this. And that's the whole piece about the big language circle that Dan pointed to. And then this part of the brain, however, is critical, particularly for those of us who are going into the coaching program. The capacity to connect with each other. And when you talk, Eric, about hearing someone talking about sadness and triggering your own, is that actually, you know, we're not closed loops. You know, that individualism that we've spoken about, that isolation that we speak about, creates that sense of it's just me, like a closed loop. But actually, I'm connected with all of you. And if I'm in conversation with you and you speak of something, I may feel the same emotion. Sometimes I notice as a coach, I feel the emotion of the client before she does. There's a sense of being in tune, and it's happening here, in that mammalian part of the brain. And one of the things that I think makes programs like this work is that we spend time connecting to each other below language, if you like. It's not that language isn't important. It's not like the rational and the cortex aren't important, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do anything or coordinate action. But that this part, our capacity to connect with each other, is critical. And to get back in touch with that is a huge piece of learning for us. I really appreciate what you say, Eric, because it points absolutely to that. This phenomenon that we call limbic resonance. When you speak of your emotion, it resonates something in deeper.